Okay, we're live. Welcome back to the 5 Million Milestone Podcast. I am Matteo, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Pierre. Hey, Pierre, how are you?
Hi, Matteo. Doing great. Excited for today's show.
Yeah, today our guest is Brian Hoppe. Brian's built and sold multiple managed service providers, and now he dedicates his time to coaching other MSP owners through their growth challenges. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I'm super excited to be here.
And yes, I have to say your story of transformation from an overworked, frustrated business owner to a successful serial entrepreneur and coach is exactly the kind of story our listeners are craving for. So we're excited to dive into this episode today. Pierre, why don't you kick us off with the first question for Brian?
Yeah. So, Brian, our first question really is trying to draw from your experience as a business owner, and specifically as an MSP owner. But I think hopefully this will apply to more than just an MSP, as well as sort of other professional services firms and listeners of this podcast. And so, how much of his or her time should an owner spend on sales and marketing? When should the owner step in or out in order to scale the business forward?
Wow, great question. Yeah, so it's one of the most important things to consider, right? As you're growing your MSP or another business, and what I find is it really depends on the size of the company, right? So if you're on the smaller side, let's say you're in the 1 million range, 2 million range, really feel like the owner should be spending a good amount of their time, if not the majority of their time, on outreach in some form or fashion. You might not be the best cold caller or that kind of a thing, but there are plenty of ways that owners can be out in the community and building partnerships, building referrals, and that kind of a thing. What I find a lot of the time is that especially MSP owners tend to start off technical and really enjoy doing technical work and the operation side of things, to the neglect of sales, and they just kind of let referrals come. And so their business growth is completely dependent on somebody saying, "Hey, why don't you should go talk to this guy," versus spending their time actually building those relationships with partners, with other business owners in the community, and just outreach. And so, the short answer, I think, is that if you're on the smaller side, you should definitely be spending 50% plus of your time. I can look at an MSP and say, if that owner is spending 50+% of their time, they are likely to grow and be successful. And if they're spending most of their time on operations or technical things, then they're going to struggle growing. And so we'll say that. And then the second part, I think, is like, if you're larger, what we tend to do is to, just go out and hire a salesperson to try to, solve our sales problems. And what I usually see is that the first 3 or 4 salespeople that MSPs hire fail. And the reason is because there's not any lead gen happening. There's not a sales process in place, and there's really just not the framework that a salesperson is going to need in order to be successful. And so I think it's like once you have your process down, and really, like, you're actually generating new leads, having new meetings every week, all of those kind of things, then the owner can start to step out of that and let it, hire a sales leader, let it start going, start running on its own. But that usually takes a pretty long time. So that might have been a little long-winded, but that's kind of my initial thoughts anyways.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of potential business owners in general kind of struggle with this issue exactly. MSPs probably more so than others, but really feeling torn between being the face of the company and maybe needing to step back to focus on strategy also at times.
Yeah.
So you've talked about how an owner's role evolves as the business grows. Can you maybe share a moment or a decision in your MSP journey where you realized you needed to make a change in how you were spending your time or energy? And what prompted that realization, and how did you go about implementing that change?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think I think for me, I've always, or I wouldn't say always, I felt really confident selling. Being in front of a potential client, and my ability to have the right conversation with them in order to kind of in order to close the deal. What I was not good at, and just didn't want to do, was was the outreach piece of it. Right? I mean, it was just not fun. And so I think at some point I realized, like, hey, this is, as hard as I try, I'm not going to be that successful at this. And so a couple of things. One, I actually hired an outside sales manager, so to speak, where I kind of the who not how concept, right? Who can I find that can actually do this job really, really well, because I'm not doing a great job at it. And then from there, kind of, building the sales process, actually finding somebody who can do the calls, generate the appointments, and all of that, and kind of taking the stuff that I was not good at, and I was never going to be the best at, and bringing in the right people to actually do those things. That was probably a change for me that made a big difference.
And you mentioned you hired a sales manager. Was this someone that was essentially a fairly senior person that was acting sort of as like a fractional sales leader?
Yeah,
Is that the
exactly.
level you're talking at?
Yeah, exactly. Because I didn't. I wasn't at a spot where I wanted to bring somebody on full time for that, but having that level of expertise, a very high level of expertise for relatively small dollar value, somebody who can manage sales reps, manage BDRs, the people doing the cold calling, and do that better than me. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so at that point, that person is not doing any sales outreach, right? That sales manager is just kind of guiding you through the process, how to set up your sales process or improve it. And then you were saying you already had some sales reps on board.
Yeah. Actually, after that is when we got the process in place enough to where it made sense to start bringing sales reps on board. And even then, it was a team sale. They're kind of driving the process, but I'm there as well. Like one thing that I find is that a lot of times MSP owners kind of sort of like abdicate their responsibility for sales and just say, okay, you're the salesperson, go close deals. It's like, well, people want to talk to the business owner, and the chances of a deal closing if I'm sitting in the room versus just a rep was much, much higher. So yeah, definitely stayed very involved in the sales process.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so another key thing that you mentioned, and what was super important as an MSP owner to do was sort of building relationship and partnerships. And so I wanted to kind of sort of, ask you more questions around what you had done to put together and nurture strong partnerships in your past MSP experiences. So can you walk us through sort of the process of identifying and approaching industry partners?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my MSP, we were really focused on financial services, and so that's banks and credit unions. So community banks, small credit unions, and I'm in Texas, so we have a lot of those here. And so one of the relationships that was really key in our growth was with a credit union software provider. And so we had a very tight relationship. And that was a process of building friendship, building relationship with the key people inside the company, getting to know them, knowing it, like, and yeah, it was being on like a friendship type level where there's a very high level of trust. And so from there, it's like, hey, what can we do to make this relationship really beneficial for both of us? You know that we serve your clients very well. You really care about them being taken care of. And so let's put something down on paper. Let's actually create and cement a relationship. And so that was really key. And not only on the, the actual relationship side, but also there were events that we would go to with those individuals, like sales reps inside the organization. We would go on sales calls together, all of that. And so and I find that's something that not a lot of MSPs do. Like actually finding somebody who serves common customers to you. They have relationships with all those customers, putting something on paper. So it's like, hey, if you refer us into somebody and they sign up, we will give you X% of that deal. Why would you not do that? Because those are, it's a lead you never had before. And, you can make the pricing what it needs to be in order for it to be a win-win. So, and with that, we had like exclusivity as well. So like, hey, we're going to give you dollars. We want to be your exclusive partner for this. And we want you, and we want you to pitch us to everybody you go into. And so they would do that as well. And so a lot of great business came out of that partnership, as well as like we would go to the events, we would build a relationship with their customers at the events, and usually come out with a new customer at the end of one of those as well. So that's kind of like something that I think not a lot of MSPs think about, but it is like, it's one of many ways, but it's a way to really drive revenue that would not be there otherwise. So that's kind of like, hopefully that kind of covers enough of what that process looked like, but happy to answer any other questions that kind of come out of that.
Yeah, it really resonated with me, and I probably have to say it's true also for probably non-MSPs. As a business owner myself, as a marketing consultant myself, I also go through these types of challenges where I struggle to properly balance the amount of time I spend communicating to prospective customers or industry leaders digitally via email or Zoom calls or LinkedIn. But I know how valuable it is to also meet people in the real world, being physically in front of them, hearing their experiences, their problems, and generally building actual relationships, right? And I think the key word there is really like friendship and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes this can sound a little intimidating to some people, especially for those like I am. Shy, I am introverted, sometimes a bit socially awkward, and it really sounds a little bit intimidating to go out or think about going out to speak to a stranger. But I think that as business owners, we need to overcome this fear really, and if not entirely on our own, it's probably possible through some mentoring or coaching as well. And just by following a few steps and guidelines, I guess you can really sort of find yourself enjoying networking because it's ultimately going to benefit your business. Mm-hmm. And then once you get to actually be in front of people, maybe you start facing different types of challenges, like you find yourself speaking to potential partners, but struggle with the next step of turning those conversations into revenue generating sort of partnerships. Mm-hmm. And so I really want to maybe try to figure out from your experience how you actually turn those relationships into actual partnerships. Is there maybe like a step-by-step process that allowed you to successfully close high-value partnership deals? Or is it really just about, finding the right time, through, meeting regularly with these people that, these type of conversations come out sort of naturally?
Yeah. I think there's not a step-by-step process. I think it really is just, it's born out of relationship. When I think about it, it's just, it has to be born out of relationship and that sort of friendship that I was talking about. And, for example, one of my clients, we're kind of talking about all of this kind of stuff. And most people, and I speak to MSPs, specifically, but, for instance, MSPs deal with all different kinds of companies. It could be a copier company, it could be a phone company, cameras, all of that. So this particular client, we're talking, and he's like, you know what, I have like 3 different people that I deal with all of the time. I've never thought, oh, you know what I should do? I should ask somebody to go to lunch once a week and just talk about, the potential of, hey, how could we partner up? Do you see anything that your clients need that I can provide? Those kind of conversations. So his commitment was, I'm going to have lunch with somebody once a week. And out of that, he got an opportunity for like this huge client, because this person is in there and already has that relationship, trusts him, the client trusts him, and so then it's like it's this whole ecosystem that I think a lot of people are leaving untapped. And so all that to say, yeah, I think it's just born out of that relationship and taking the time. So what could you do once a week? Yeah, you could have lunch with somebody once a week. That'd be, it's not too much work. It's kind of fun, or happy hour, whatever your jam is. But yeah, it's kind of that never eat alone concept, right? As well. So
Yeah.
that's what I'd say.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I actually have a sort of a monthly. It's not a once a week, but I have a once monthly lunch meetup with one of my fellow friends who also runs the marketing for another company. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun, a good time. Sometimes
Yeah.
we talk about business, sometimes we don't at all. Sometimes we talk about life and
Yep.
trips and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's always inspiring and helpful to talk to other people that are doing similar things as you are to kind of get
Yeah.
inspired. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things that you mentioned is, I mean, you had one core partnership, and essentially it was nurtured. So it sounds like if you're going to kind of go that route, don't necessarily expect and try to necessarily scale it per se, right? Like maybe it's more about having one really good and strong partnership versus a lot, right? And or perhaps it's just a few. Have you seen people who were successful with having more than just one fruitful partnership? Or
Yeah, I think so. I think that, like, for me, that was that was really the main one. But other places that I would think about focusing would be, and this was one of our metrics, which was, we called it COIs, or centers of influence, right?
Mhm.
So there, everybody knows in your community, there's a few people that just know everybody. It could be an attorney, an accountant, or a politician, or some. I mean, so they're on city council, or they just know everybody, right?
I know
And
what you mean.
what's that?
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there are, everybody knows some of those people. Um, Build a relationship with that person, and again, sit down with them. Maybe it's a once a month thing. Like, hey, how can I add value to you? Here's what I'm looking for in potential clients. Who do you know that is, a business owner that is, that's doing really well? How do and would you be willing to make me an introduction to this person? Like, those kind of conversations can be really, really powerful. And again, not a lot of people do it, right? Those are the kind of people that love to sit down with business owners and talk with them and get to know them and all of that. And so that's just kind of like another avenue, I think, besides just like just the formalized partnership. It's like a referral partnership, right? It's like a little bit different, but it's not even a partnership. It's just a relationship, right, with somebody who knows a lot of people. So that's another, I guess, route to think about as well.
Yeah. And yeah, and I guess, is that something you do more through kind of attending a local chamber of commerce, or again, just being more kind of attentive to, who's in your LinkedIn network, who do you see pop up over and over again in your LinkedIn network, or just in your conversations on a weekly or daily basis?
Yeah, absolutely. And it all depends on your context, right? Like if you're an internet business, that's different than if you're a local business or a national business or whatever. But for me, like I'm at least once a week networking with somebody in my industry or somebody adjacent, and just getting on a call, getting on a Zoom and just having a chat. Like, hey, what do you do? Here's what I do. Is there any way that I can help you in your, and I'm all about like, hey, how can I help you? If I help enough people, then business is going to come back to me, right? Like it's just, it just happens. And so yeah, absolutely. I think it's just that, again, it's just the relationship. It's the building that relationship. There's one guy that I did that with, and I ran into like 3 different people that could use his help. And I was like, hey, here, let me make you an intro to this guy. I don't get anything for it. I'm just helping this person and a potential client that could be a good fit. And so I'm giving, right? We call it being a go-giver. And so I'm just adding value to as many people as I can. Eventually that's going to come back to me in some way, shape, or form. So
Yeah. Brian, during our pre-interviews, we spoke also a bit about, and sort of one of the catalysts or factors of your success was also about participating to industry events and conferences.
mm-hmm.
And one of the questions that we were wanting to ask you was how important it is for an MSP to attend sort of industry events, and not necessarily MSP related events, but more so your target market industry events. And
Yeah.
so would you recommend an MSP to just participate as an attendee, as maybe finding the space to speak at that event, or maybe even having a booth? What would you say is the best sort of strategy for new MSPs, or MSPs haven't really you know tried events just yet and want to sort of get their feet wet for the first time?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I mean, yeah, for me it was a big, it was a big thing. Again, I think you know one of the best ways to attract clients is thought leadership, and I'm talking less around putting your stuff out on the internet, right, versus getting in front of people. If somebody sees you speak intelligently about your subject matter area and starts to see you as the expert, when they have that problem or that issue or that thing they're dissatisfied, they're going to think of you, right? They're going to be like, oh, I saw this guy speak, he said he does IT, great, that's the person I'm going to call. So yeah, I think that it could be trade shows, it could be events where business owners are hanging out, learning. But yeah, definitely. I think that was one of our main kind of, besides partnership, is one of our main places that we found and attracted clients. And so I think the combo of having a small team there, the combo of the business owner speaking, and sharing thought leadership in person in front of potential clients, and the booth, where you can actually have those conversations after, because people are going to want to talk to you if you have a good presentation, and you're engaging and show that you're kind of the expert. And so I think the combo of those two things is really fantastic. So those provide so much opportunity to build a relationship, right? Like, don't just go to the booth and then and stand around there, and then once it closes, then go back to your hotel room. Like, hang out with the people who are there, right? I see so many people, so many like vendors and stuff just kind of pack up the booth and head out and go do work in their room. Book lunch meetings, book dinners, buy somebody dinner, buy somebody drinks, that kind of stuff. And those times can be even more valuable a lot of times than the booth times as well. So that's kind of a little bit of what I would do if I were thinking about that. And really finding the right events is a big deal, because there can be some where it's like, hey, we're one of 15 of my kind of company here. let's find one where I'm one of two or three, or I'm the only one, right? And that was the case for a while at one of the events that I would do. So that's always nice when it's like, hey, we're kind of the ones who are here, and we're here year after year after year. They know who we are now, and they can really, they really start to trust you. And then you hang out with them, and so they know kind of who you are as a person, and all of that as well.
And so would you say that part of what makes this effective is also sort of the consistency of showing up year after year? So you can't just expect it to work out right away, and it takes time to establish yourself as one of those industry experts as well.
Yeah, and I'll add also, a lot of times people just sign up for hey, I'm going to do a booth, and then they just show up without doing anything beforehand. So one of the most powerful things is, I mean, you get the list beforehand, you email everybody, you say, hey, I'd love to set up a time to chat with you. Can I buy you a drink after the show, or after hours, or whatever, and actually setting up meetings while you're there, instead of just kind of sitting around during the dead time and checking your email and stuff. So
yeah, makes sense.
Pierre, go ahead.
Okay. So many of our listeners are working with limited resources, and so if an owner can only attend one or two trade shows, how would you advise them to choose the events they attend? Any specific approach?
That's a good one, because I mean, there's a lot of value in going to like MSP industry events, and there's potentially also a lot of value, if you do it right, in doing trade shows for your industry, or for where you're a vendor for potential clients. And so I mean, if you could only do one, maybe you want to do the maybe you want to do the one where you might actually get clients, right? As opposed to the easy one or the fun one, which is hey, I'm heading over to DattoCon, and it's like a big party, which is great, and you learn a lot and all that kind of stuff. But if you could only do one, maybe the right thing is to do something that's going to get you clients. If you could do two, maybe one of one and one of the other. But yeah, I definitely see a lot of people who will just go to MSP industry events and not do other shows that are really client focused, and I think that's probably a mistake for that a lot of people make. So that's kind of obviously resources are limited, but choosing strategically is really important. You do want to stay plugged into the industry, but you also want to get new clients, so you got to plan accordingly.
Yeah, I think it's really important to really know and target, know your target market, first of all, and then align the event strategy with your business goals. I think at Pronto, we often see businesses maybe hit a wall somewhere between 2 or 3 million in annual revenue. Would that be right, Pierre?
Yeah.
Is it around that?
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes MSP owners feel like they are doing everything right. I don't know if that's kind of what you feel when you start working with your coaching clients, Brian. But my feeling is that as a business owner, you're feeling like you're doing everything is right, but then they have maybe successfully navigated the early stages of growth, and then still find themselves stuck. They are doing all the things that got them to 3 million, but those same things or same strategies aren't the ones getting them to achieve 5 million or beyond. And so given your perspective as both a successful business owner, MSP owner, and now a coach, I'm curious about your insights on this challenge. In your coaching practice, what's the most common obstacle you see preventing MSPs from breaking through the 5 million revenue barrier?
Yeah, such a good question, and so many factors that go into it. But I definitely agree that there is that spot, that $2-3 million spot, which is very difficult for owners to get through. Find a few commonalities. So one being the owner is generally kind of at the center of everything, and unbeknownst to them, they have become a bottleneck to their own growth. I find that's relatively common. And so, thinking about, okay, what kind of team do I have in place that I can actually delegate to responsibly, and so that not every decision is going through me. And so many people are so used to being the smartest person, the best tech, the most the most knowledgeable about everything, that it's really hard for them to let go, and so they end up becoming their own worst enemy. And so creating a leadership team and doing the strategic things, implementing a business operating system so that you actually have a method by which you're running the business, and excuse me, and it's not just by muscle and feel. So it's this transition from, okay, I kind of know, I have a pulse on everything that's going on, to I'm running it strategically with a system. And so I see that, lacking in systems, lacking in process, and then really really being the center of everything versus letting go of the different functional areas of the business to leaders who have been, who are appropriately trained and equipped to actually do that. And that's a whole other conversation. But I find that's a big thing. And then, I mean, just overall, like not having a system for selling, right? Because a big challenge is, like, at that size level, you have to probably grow by 20% in your MRR in order to not go backwards, because you're having you're having to pay your people more, you have attrition, all of that kind of stuff. So you actually have to have a sales system in place that's going to do that. And it's so much more difficult at that size versus like a million, because you get a lot more referral, or you're able to keep up with the churn by referrals and stuff like that. And you just can't do that anymore once you hit 2-3 million and higher. So yeah, so I'll stop there. I could probably talk about this one for a really long time.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to, focus a lot on building the systems and the processes and the documentation. I think when we spoke earlier, you talked as well about having a culture of documentation as being sort of a very important element of the growth. And I think, you mentioned it for, the technical side or the operational side, but I definitely agree that not just for sales, but also for the marketing side, having that is what allows you to, kind of let go of sort of the day to day and then focus more on the strategic side of things. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And when it comes to sort of building a leadership team or letting go of certain functions, there are different types of MSP or business ownerships. I guess you could be the solo owner, or you can have a partner. And I think you mentioned maybe having a partner in your previous business. Were you able to sort of split things between you and your partner, or were you both involved in strategic decision? How did you work that out actually?
Yeah, no. So I had a business partner, but he was not involved in the business at all. We'd talk once a month probably, and that's about it. So he was running a different business, didn't want to be involved in it other than kind of as an investor. And so no, yeah, I didn't have a partner, which is, if you have a partner that's also working in the business and the relationship's good and all that kind of stuff, I've seen a lot of MSPs be really successful because there's a lot more ways to spread the load, right? So if you have that, that's great. If you don't have that, then yes, you have to bring in other executives and other leaders into the mix, so that you are not the one that is doing everything. And so yeah, a lot of times I wished I was like, man, it would be really great if I had another person doing a lot of this stuff with me. But we were able to build that inside
Yeah.
the team, and really create a very cohesive, extremely functional leadership team, which allowed me to do a lot of that.
Got it. So it was more about building that leadership team, and then was there a particular hire that you found was more important, or?
I think initially, I'm going to say that the ops leader is probably extremely important, because owners tend to have a lot of their brain space sucked up with operations. And if you can find the right person who's really going to take ownership of that, of like service delivery, and kind of the core operations of the business, it just frees you up so much, right? Like, and I got to the point where with that individual, he was so on top of things that I hardly anything would ever get to me, and if it got to me, I knew that it was like, this is huge. But realistically, like, that was an area of the business I didn't have to think about much, and so I was able to focus on sales, some finance, and strategy, and that makes a huge difference.
One thing I'm thinking about, Brian, is that in an industry such as the one of MSPs that is so mature and so commoditized, at least from my eyes, looking at it as a marketer, it really seems as as the real success factor for an MSP owner is to really be dialed into processes, operations, and really becoming the face of the company, not much as the guy or the person who's wearing all the ads within the business, but more so as the person who is building relationships and then handing over those relationships to the sort of experts within the company that can actually execute on those relationships once the sort of the partnership has come to fruition. So would you say that pretty much every MSP out there can realistically achieve the goals you've achieved yourself if they really put themselves to work on all these sort of tasks or processes that we've talked about throughout this episode?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think in the MSP business world, anybody has a chance to be successful. I think what's coming to mind is that a lot of times if we can help the owner become who they need to be in order for the business to grow, that is generally more important than a lot of things, right? So I like to ask that question. Like, let's say you've set a vision, you know where you want to be 5 years from now, you have a clear plan to get there. Are you the leader that you need to be in order for the business to get there? And if you're not, then you need to get busy working on yourself. And so I think it's like a process of becoming the person who can lead an organization that's double the size of what it is now. It requires different skills, different abilities. It requires working in your particular zone of genius, and growing yourself. And so I think that as you were kind of asking that question, it's how do we make you into the person you need to be in order for the business to achieve what you want the business to achieve.
Yeah, I really like this, because again, it's really not as much about being innovative in the way we package the service itself. I think the service is the service. I guess maybe a little bit of strategic sort of mind goes into how to select your market or your target market. If you have some sort of specialization in, like you had with community banks, right? But other than that, it's really more about working on yourself as a business owner, which makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting the right help, right? Like, we all need help along the way, and And sometimes people really try to go it alone, but getting the right help for what you need to help you take the business to the next level.
And so when I listened to what you were saying, it sounds a little bit, it's about, when you're talking about who do you need to be in order to, for your business to continue moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
would you say that ties in with sort of what is the vision that you have for the company, or what is the vision that you have for yourself? And then like, what comes first? Is it the vision for the company? Or is it the vision for yourself as the owner? And, often I think when you start talking about vision, people can get kind of frustrated, and it's kind of like, oh, well, the company just needs to make a profit, and that's why we're in business, to make money and pay the bills, so to speak, at a very simple level. What
Yeah.
how do you reconcile all of that?
Yeah, man, it can be a challenge. But I think, I've got several tools that are really helpful for that vision building. And it's really the vision piece is, a lot of people that I talk to, first conversation, it's like, hey, where do you want to be in 3 years? And they're like, well, I want to have more clients and I want to have more team members. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Right. So how do you get crystal clear on where you want to be 10 years from now? And really paint a picture of that, and paint a picture of it in a way that gets your team really inspired and fired up for like, hey, here's where we're going. And so your job as the leader, the CEO, is that vision and carrying that vision to your people, so they're excited, they're energized for the growth that the company is going to experience, and all of those kind of things. And I think that's a huge piece that's usually missed. And a business operating system can help you implement that, but and then become really crystal clear on that. So I think you do have to have a vision for the company. And I'll just speak for myself. I'm a lifelong learner, and I always want to be growing and learning. And there are a lot of people who that's hard for, and that's okay. And it could be that your goal is actually to grow enough to where you can bring in somebody who's more suited to be the CEO, right? Than you might be as the owner. And that could be part of your goals. Or you can commit to a process of growth so that you become that person that can actually take the company where you want it to go. So yeah, it's a little chicken and egg, to your point, but I think both things are necessary as well, right? And I think you can set the vision, you can put a kind of North Star out there for here's where we're going, without necessarily being the one who can actually take it there. That's also, that happens relatively often. And and then there's plenty of stories about CEOs out there that took their business to X level, and then they said, hey, I'm the founder, I've been the CEO, but somebody else needs to come in so they can take it to here, because that's where we're going. And so that's okay too.
Yeah, that makes sense. So eventually it's about, finding the right person, and, do you want to be that person, or do you bring someone else from the outside?
Yeah.
So, and looking back at your journey from sort of building and selling multiple MSPs to, now coaching, what's the single most valuable lesson you've learned about scaling an MSP business that you wish you'd known when you first started?
I only get one? Man, this is crazy.
What's the top three?
Yeah, right. Well, okay. So, hey, that's a great segue. And what I go back to is, for me, what made the biggest difference from in my journey, and so three things, and kind of going from, I'm not really sure how to do this, I'm kind of stuck, to, okay, I know exactly how to grow and scale this company. First thing was being a part of a MSP industry peer group with other MSP owners that we were in close relationship with, held us accountable, helped us with a lot of things that we just didn't know at the time. Second thing was implementing a business operating system. Whatever your flavor, it could be EOS, it could be scaling up. There's another one that I use that I help my clients implement. But whatever it is, get a business operating system in place. And it's going to make life so much easier as you try to grow. And then the third thing is executive coaching. So that was a game changer for me in my leadership and the business, and also my personal life. Life changing, life transforming. And so whenever somebody asks like what things could you do to kind of help and scale your growth, those are my 3 recommendations: peer group, business operating system, and a coach.
Nice. And so AI hasn't replaced coaches just yet, right? To be clear.
Indeed not. I mean, they're it's coming along. You can do a lot with ChatGPT, but it's really great to have a person,
Yeah.
So
No, there's still that need for that human connection, like we talked about. And
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I think we've come to an end of another episode of the 5 million milestone. Brian, thank you for your openness and for sharing your valuable insights from your journey. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, great question. So I'm mostly on LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn all the time, just /in/Brian Hoppe. And then, I've got a website, so brianhoppe.com. So either one of those are great places to find me. And that's a good start anyways.
And Brian, you have a newsletter on LinkedIn actually where you give updates. What's the name of that newsletter?
You know what? I don't even know off the top of my head. I think it's MSP Mastery. I think it's MSP Mastery. That sounds right.
Well, anyway, I recommend it to our listeners. A lot of very valuable tips there. Good things to talk about from a real person, not from an AI robot. So
there you go.
All right. If you found this episode valuable, please don't hesitate to subscribe to the 5 Million Milestone Podcast and leave us a review. Until next time, this is Matteo and Pierre and Brian. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
Thanks so much.